They said the house was cursed. For 30 years, no one dared step inside. The marble pillars crumbled, vines swallowed the gate, and the brass lion knockers on the double doors, covered in dust and silence. But inside that mansion, locked away behind secrets and time, were letters, dozens of them, each one addressed to her, not to the press, not to the board, not even to the wife he left behind, to his daughter. Before we dive in, if this story moves you, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell to keep the stories coming your way. Just a heads up, we don't just share stories here. We invite you to experience them. There's a little quiz at the end, just for fun. It's our way of saying thanks for watching closely and spotting the subtle moments others might miss. Be the first to answer. Don't let someone else steal your spotlight. The man who broke the lock was named Peter Colson, a soft-spoken city records clerk who'd never even jaywalked in his life. He'd been tasked with cataloging abandoned estates. This one stood out, once owned by Richard Halden, the tech mogul who vanished in '94, just months before the stock crash that gutted his empire. The house sat alone on a bluff above the Hudson River, hidden behind wrought iron gates and a locked driveway. Peter parked on the shoulder, boots crunching gravel as he approached. He didn't expect the door to give, but it did, groaning on rusted hinges like it had been waiting. Inside, it was like time had stopped. A glass of whiskey still sat half-finished on the bar. Dust floated like snowflakes through slats of morning light. A woman's shawl lay across a velvet couch, untouched for decades. Peter stepped carefully, his breath echoing through the hall. The office was the last door on the right. It smelled of cedar and tobacco. The bookshelves sagged with hardcovers. A single desk lamp, still plugged in, flickered when he tried the switch. And then he saw them, tied in twine, stacked inside the bottom drawer. Letters, each one addressed in elegant cursive, to Eliza. He read the first, then the second, and then he dropped into the cracked leather chair, stunned. They weren't business notes. They weren't drafts. They were confessions, pages of grief, regret, secrets too dark for boardrooms or headlines. Peter Colson read about an affair that started the year Eliza was born, a choice Richard Halden made to stay married for the brand, not the love. He read about the night Eliza nearly drowned in the pool and how Richard never forgave himself for not being home. And he read about the will, the real one. Tucked inside one envelope was a sealed legal document, notarized, signed, dated 5 weeks before Richard's disappearance. It left everything to Eliza. Not the foundation, not the university, not even the famous Halden Trust. All of it. The house, the shares, the patents, to a girl who'd been told for decades that her father abandoned her. Peter stared at the pile. 37 letters, all stamped, none mailed. He looked up. The family portrait still hung above the mantel. Richard, his wife, and Eliza, no older than 5, smiling, arms wide, in a red polka-dot dress. Peter Colson didn't know what to do, but he knew what it meant. The truth had been sealed in that house, and now it was in his hands. He placed the stack of letters on the desk, his fingertips lingering over the last envelope. He didn't open it. Something in him, some long-honed instinct from years of bureaucracy and quiet, invisible duties, told him this wasn't his to finish. Not yet. Instead, he pulled out his phone. No service. Of course. The mansion, remote and surrounded by thick trees, may as well have been an island. He'd have to walk back to his car, to the road, maybe even to the diner he passed 6 miles back to make a call. But call who? The city had ordered an inventory of the property, not an excavation of private pain. No one mentioned a daughter. Peter thought for a moment. He remembered the name, Eliza Halden, from a brief mention in an old newspaper archive years ago. A scandal, a custody battle, A trust fund pulled back. And then, nothing. She had vanished from the public eye long before her father did. Peter's fingers hovered over the desk phone. Deadline. He scanned the room again, heart pulsing with a strange kind of ache. The ache of witnessing something intimate and irreversible, something that hadn't asked to be seen. He looked again at the final envelope. It had one word written in black ink. Read. Peter hesitated, then unfolded it. Eliza, if this finds you, I hope you've already torn the others open, angry as hell. I hope you screamed at me through every word, but I hope you also read them, because no one ever told you the truth. They said I left, that I was too proud, that I couldn't bear losing control. But the truth is, they never gave me the choice. Your mother, her lawyers, the board, the people I thought were loyal. They wanted my silence, not my love. They told me if I didn't step back, if I didn't disappear, they'd bury you in courts and custody hearings until your whole childhood turned to ash. So I left, and I waited. I built this house for us, for after. And when I tried to come back, they locked the doors from the inside. I never stopped writing. I never stopped waiting. Peter's hands trembled. A gust of wind rattled the windows. One of the letter stacks tipped and scattered across the hardwood floor like fallen leaves. He didn't pick them up. He just sat there, staring at the empty chair behind the desk, the one Richard must have occupied for hours at a time, crafting every word he could never send. Peter wasn't a man given to emotion, but something broke open in his chest. And still, what haunted him most wasn't what the letters said. It was what they didn't. There were no addresses, no timestamps after 1994, nothing to tell him if Eliza had ever come close to discovering any of this. That night, Peter didn't go home. He made a bed from the antique couch in the parlor, unable to leave the house behind. The air inside the mansion had grown heavier with the moonrise, thick with memory. He couldn't shake the thought, if this was the truth, who had kept it from her? And more importantly, why? The next morning, Peter returned with gloves, a scanner, and a camera. He wasn't an archivist by trade, but decades in public records had taught him how to preserve what mattered. By noon, he had cataloged each letter, except for 3. They were missing. He checked every drawer, every shelf, the safe behind the bookshelf already ajar and empty. No signs of forced entry, no dust disturbed. But the sequence numbers, written faintly in the bottom corners, skipped from 12 to 16. Peter muttered aloud, "Why skip just those?" His answer came not from the room, but from the old photograph tucked into a book on the coffee table. 3 women stood shoulder to shoulder, Richard's wife, Eliza's nanny, and a third woman, unfamiliar. She stood apart, not smiling, holding a slim envelope in her hand. Peter turned the photo over. Faded ink read, August 1993, Rosemary, June, and Camille. Camille. He wrote the name down. Later that day, in the city archives, Peter would dig into staff records from the Halden estate. Camille Sullivan, house secretary, employed from 1989 until September 1994, the same month Richard Halden disappeared. She had vanished too. By week's end, Peter was consumed. He filed no formal report. The mansion, for all its secrets, wasn't condemned. It was protected. Legal gray zones covered it like ivy. Still, every night he returned, and every night he read another letter aloud, as if Eliza might be listening somewhere beyond the walls. Then, on a rainy Thursday morning, someone knocked on the front door. Peter, startled, nearly spilled his coffee. He opened the door slowly. And there she was, not as he'd imagined her from the photos, not the child in the red dress or the blurry tabloid shots. She was grown now, maybe late 30s. Eliza Halden. She stood with a hesitant calm, umbrella closed at her side, eyes tracing the stone lions by the entrance. "Did you break in?" she asked flatly. Peter blinked. I work for the city. I was sent to catalog. Don't bother, she said, stepping inside. Her heels echoed through the foyer. They've been trying to sell this place since I was 18. Every time someone gets close, the lawyers step in. They don't want it cleared. They want it forgotten. Peter followed her down the hall. Then why come now? He asked. She paused in front of the office door. Because yesterday, someone left this on my car. She pulled a folded letter from her purse, yellowed, sealed with wax. Peter recognized the handwriting immediately. To Eliza, for when you're ready. Eliza turned, eyes unreadable. You have more, don't you? Peter nodded slowly. I need to see them all, she said. Even the ones that hurt. He stepped aside, let her through. But before she crossed the threshold into the study, she whispered, almost too quiet to hear. I begged him not to fight back. Peter didn't ask what she meant. That evening, she read alone. Peter waited outside under the porch awning, rain drumming overhead. He didn't expect gratitude. But when Eliza finally emerged, hours later, eyes glassy, cheeks streaked with tears, she said only this: they lied to both of us. She handed him a single page. Not one of the old letters, a new one. Fresh ink, addressed to Camille Sullivan. Camille, I know what you took. I know what you hid. You thought I'd be too broken to find out. Maybe I was, but if you're reading this, know that I remember the night you drove me away from the house. I remember the phone call you answered in his study. I remember the silence after. You said it was for my protection, but I think you just didn't want me to know how much he loved me. Eliza folded the page and held it tight to her chest. Peter didn't move. The rain had stopped, but something colder had settled between them. No compromise, no reunion, just a truth neither of them could unlearn. And from the corner of the mansion, beyond the vines and stone and silence, a faint creak echoed. A door that had been shut for decades, now ajar. Peter and Eliza both turned toward the sound. Neither spoke. The air inside the mansion thickened, as though the house itself had taken a breath and was now waiting to see what they'd do. Eliza stepped forward first. Her fingers grazed the paneled wall as she passed, like she was reassuring herself this was real, that she was here, not dreaming, not 13 again, standing outside her father's study and waiting for a hug that never came. Peter followed silently, his eyes scanning every corner. The creak had come from the east wing, a place Peter hadn't explored yet. The blueprints marked it as a guest quarters, though rumors hinted at something more. A room where Richard Halden conducted meetings off the books, where no secretaries entered, where his wife never stepped foot. Eliza paused in front of the door. It was barely open, no more than a crack, but enough to see that the carpet inside was clean. No dust, no rot. Peter blinked. That room's been sealed since the week he disappeared, Eliza finished. She pushed the door open slowly. It didn't groan this time. It surrendered. Inside was a sunroom. Unexpected. Floor-to-ceiling windows faced the water. Ferns had long since withered in cracked clay pots. A grandfather clock ticked softly in the corner, still wound. At the center of the room stood a single chair, and on it, a cassette recorder. Next to it, a note. Eliza picked it up. Her hands trembled as she read, "To the one who stayed, and the one who came back." No name, no date, just that. Peter exhaled. Should we? Eliza didn't wait. She pressed play. The tape clicked, word, and then a voice, smooth, familiar, steady, but tinged with exhaustion. Richard Halden. If you're hearing this, then the locks finally gave. I won't waste time on pleasantries. You came for answers, but you'll leave with choices. The truth doesn't matter if no one's willing to carry it forward. They told me to sign. They said the foundation would collapse if I didn't walk away. They said my name would be erased, not in the papers, but in her heart. And they were right. Eliza, if this is you, I failed. I let them bargain your childhood for my silence. I let them build walls around your memories of me, until even I didn't recognize myself in them. But I didn't stop loving you. I never stopped writing, never stopped planning. The patents, the accounts, the real legacy, I buried it in a name they couldn't trace. It's all still yours, if you want it. But you'll have to take it knowing this. Camille didn't do it alone. Someone else was always in the room. The tape clicked off. Silence returned, sharper than before. Eliza set the recorder down like it might shatter. Her face was unreadable, but her shoulders, always held high, always perfect posture, slumped an inch. Peter watched her, unsure what to say. "Do you believe him?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the window. The trees swayed outside. The river moved like glass. "I used to think he left because of me," she said finally. "Because I asked him not to fight. Because I wanted the screaming to stop." Peter stepped forward. "You were a kid. I was old enough to know the difference between surrender and betrayal." Peter nodded slowly. "And now?" She turned. "I think we were both betrayed." Later that night, Peter returned to the office and began searching through the filing cabinets he hadn't opened yet. Eliza was asleep on the couch, wrapped in an old blanket she'd found in the hall closet. She hadn't cried. She hadn't asked him to stay. But she hadn't asked him to leave either. The bottom drawer of the filing cabinet was jammed. Peter yanked it hard. It flew open with a metallic snap, and something slid out from the back. A photograph. 3 signatures on the back. Richard Halden, Camille Sullivan, and Douglas Penn. Peter blinked. That name wasn't familiar. He flipped the photo over. A man, tall, silver hair, expensive suit, stood between Camille and Richard, arms around them both. Peter grabbed his laptop. A quick search turned up a single obituary. Douglas Penn, chief counsel for the Halden Foundation, passed away in 2003. Chief counsel, he wasn't just in the room. He wrote the room. Peter looked over at Eliza, then back at the photo. He slipped it into an envelope and labeled it, "For her eyes only." Some truths needed pacing. The next morning, Eliza found Peter in the dining hall, sipping coffee beside a stack of letter scans. She didn't greet him, just stared at the pages. "You read them all?" she asked. "Almost," he said. "Some are still hard." She sat beside him. "You know what I remember most?" she asked. The silence. Not the yelling, not the decisions. Just the silence afterward. Peter listened. "I was 8 when Camille packed my things," she continued. "She told me I'd go live with my aunt in Boston, said Daddy was too busy. But when I cried, she said, 'You'll thank me when you're older.'" "And did you?" Peter asked. She shook her head. "Number. But I pretended I did, because it was easier than wondering." She looked up. "Now I know." Peter hesitated, then pushed the envelope toward her. She opened it. Her eyes narrowed. "Douglas Penn." She nodded slowly. "He came to the house once, argued with my father for hours. I watched through the railing upstairs. Afterward, my mother stopped sleeping in their bedroom." Peter leaned in. "There's more to this than just Camille." "There always was," Eliza whispered. She folded the photo carefully and tucked it into her bag. By that evening, a new box had arrived. Unmarked. No return label. Inside, a stack of VHS tapes, all labeled H Private Sessions. Peter set the first tape into the player in the library. The screen flickered. Richard Halden appeared, sitting in the same sunroom chair from before. Session 1, for legal clarity and personal sanity. Today, Camille informed me the board met without me. They used the clause I wrote to protect Eliza, to push me out. I created a legacy for my daughter, and now they're carving it up while she's in a different zip code, thinking I just left. I've signed the documents under protest, but they can't erase everything. Some things are buried deeper than paper. Camille said she'd protect Eliza, but trust bought is trust borrowed. The tape ended. Peter turned to Eliza. She sat frozen, lips tight. "That was 2 weeks before he disappeared," she said. Peter nodded. "Someone didn't want you finding these." "But they kept them anyway," she added. "Why keep what you fear?" Neither had an answer, and neither noticed the note slid under the front door until a breeze knocked it against the wood. Peter picked it up. Typed. No name, no date. Stop digging. Not everything buried should be unearthed. In the end, it wasn't the letters. It wasn't the tapes, or even the sealed room. It was the silence. The silence that shaped Eliza's life more than any decision ever made on her behalf. The kind of silence that doesn't echo, it absorbs, it rewrites. And maybe that's the cruelest kind of betrayal. Not the lies people tell you, but the truths they keep quiet long enough for you to believe something else. Peter Colson had come to the mansion expecting dust and paperwork. Instead, he found a daughter walking through the ruins of a life someone else decided she should forget. No closure, no reunion, no clear villain, just choices, each made for reasons that no longer mattered, and consequences that still did. Because some stories don't end, they fracture, and the pieces never quite fit back together. Thanks for watching. If this story made you pause, reflect, or even just feel something you didn't expect, leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. And hey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you never miss a story that might just change how you see the world. Remember, there's always a quiz at the end. Be the first to answer. Don't let someone else steal your spotlight. Drop your answer in the comments below. Until next time, remember, some echoes don't fade. They just wait to be heard. Quiz. How many times was the name Peter Colson mentioned in this story?